Saints fans and Who-Dats from all over the world. It's time for the Bayou Blitz. With your host, Bob Rose.
Good evening, New Orleans Saints fans, fans of the NFL, and fans of the Bayou Blitz everywhere. I am Bob Rose. I'm one of your co-hosts for the Bayou Blitz, and we thank you, as always, for having us into your homes and over your airways again on a Wednesday night. Joining me as my partner in crime and my very good friend, Mr. Kyle Mosley. How are you tonight, this Wednesday, Kyle?
Doing well, my friend. What is going on in the Who-Dat Nation? What's going on with you?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm in a 13-10 mood. I'm in the type of mood that we are all in after our favorite teams kept us up late on a Thursday night, on a work night, losing to the Dallas Cowboys in what I can only describe as a shocking type of loss. Not the fact that they lost it, but the way they lost it.
Yeah. Well, man, you got to do one of those, what's that girl, Taylor Swift, shake it off. You just got to shake it off, man. And Who-Dat Nation, we told y'all last week, and remember I was thinking it was going to be a close game, and I said also I would not be surprised if they lost. Remember that? I said it. But I'm going to tell you this much, man. The professor used to always say the New Orleans Saints under Sean Payton have the propensity and proclivity to lose the games they should win and win the games they should lose. And it's never failed us that this team really would lay an egg like we did. Now, you have to be encouraged, though, Bob. Think about this. Laid an egg. National TV audience looked at us laying an egg. That first half was abysmal, right? We only gave the Dallas Cowboys 13 points, and we still lost the game by 3 points. So that's the encouraging thing, because if we played our worst and lost only by a 3-point margin, we got that out the way. The rest of the season, we should be okay. You know, the first game of the season, we thought, man, that was one of our worst games ever played. But no, thank God it wasn't. You know, I'm glad we didn't do this type of performance in the playoffs, man. And that's what you got to be encouraged about. You know, what can they learn from this? What can we learn from this? And how can these guys moving forward into the meat of the schedule coming down the stretch, how will they respond is going to be the telltale sign, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, give all the credit in the world to Dallas, particularly defensively. We knew that they were going to give out a solid defensive performance, and then that there were some concerning things on that side of the ball, and they did. They played extremely well. It's not like we're talking about this year's version of the Oakland Raiders or the team masquerading as the Oakland Raiders or anything like that. Dallas is a legitimate playoff contender, and they earned the victory. Throughout the Saints, some of the Saints chat sites, a lot of people were complaining about the officiating, which you used the word abysmal for the Saints' offensive performance and first half performance, and that hit the nail right on the head. But that same wording can be used for the officials for sure. Now, neither you or I spend a whole lot of time talking about officiating, and I don't think either one of us want to do that tonight. Look, officiating didn't cost the New Orleans Saints this football game. It was one of the nails in the coffin for that night, to be sure. But the Saints, they did not come to play. They did not come with their proverbial A game, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. I remember tweeting out even at halftime, I had wondered out loud if the New Orleans Saints offense had even bothered to make the trip from New Orleans. I don't know. Maybe they were sitting at home listening to some of the replays of the Bayou Blitz or something like that. but they were definitely outclassed on that side of the ball, and they struggled. And there are some concerning things as this team heads into the stretch run that we're going to talk about tonight. But defensively, I thought they played a magnificent football game, especially after the first couple of Dallas drives were in the books. Eli Apple in particular, in the first 2 Dallas drives, he had 4 key completions against him and 3 penalties flagged against him. But after that, even he settled down his play a little bit. And that defensive line in New Orleans, they balled out. They played a spectacular game. They're playing winning football on the defensive side of the ball, especially in that front 7, and that's certainly one of the main encouraging signs that we could take away from this football game.
Yeah, definitely. I had at least 4 things I wanted to say that were encouraging about the team, and you took the defensive line play right out of my mouth right there. But guys, before I even go into that, realize that sometimes these are human beings, and the Saints players are young guys and young human beings, and sometimes you start fooling yourself when you read the press and you read the papers, you read the social media chat rooms and whatever else that's out there, and you stop taking seriously the things you need to do. Okay? And Bob, I'm just going to circle back around what kind of was some telling signs to me that we may have a loss against the Cowboys. Went back to the fact where Michael Thomas, Eli Apple, J.T. Barrett, Marshawn Lattimore were on the sidelines for the Michigan OSU game. Okay? Now, people want to say, well, Kyle has nothing to do with it. They had time off. Okay. All right. That's fine. But remember in that Eagles game how Thomas, Kamara, as well as Mark Ingram were just dancing it up and having a great time. Now, I know I'm getting old if I'm starting to critique these points, though, Bob. But I started to get concerned. That's the best thing I could say. I started to get concerned right then, and I started to say, okay, guys, humility. Remember coming into that Tampa Bay game, the first game, the press was saying there's no way they were going to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
And coming
we
out,
said it.
We said it. And coming out of that, those preseason games, we just felt this team was destined for the Super Bowl. Remember? And they laid an egg on the first game of the season. So the same thing happened here. No way the Dallas Cowboys are going to win. But like you said, the encouraging thing is this squad could be one of the best squads going into the playoff run, right? But the defensive line play showed me that that's highly encouraging. What's discouraging to me, though, Bob, was the offensive line play from Max Unger in particular.
Yeah.
That's what Max Unger was getting turned around, missing blocks. And I saw one play where he spun around, and instead of going for the block that to block the guy that was ahead of him, because Mark Ingram was rushing the ball, in an inexplicable way, he decides to turn back around to block the guy that was already tackling Mark Ingram. Tell me, how does that make sense?
It didn't. It didn't, but there was a lot of things in that football game that didn't make sense. The entire offensive line played horribly. That's the only friendly word that I could come up with. But Unger and Jermon Bushrod's poor play in particular was what stood out to me. I described Bushrod as a human turnstile and Unger as a human speed bump that night. That's not something. I don't think that it's something that we need to be concerned about going into this last stretch. Not as dominant as this unit has been all year long, game in and game out. But they did pick a poor time to have their worst game of the season against a very talented Dallas front. Unger might be the weak link of the normal New Orleans starting five. And when I say normal, I mean, with all due respect to Bushrod, he, at this stage of his career, is only a serviceable backup. The normal starting five would be Teron Armstead at left tackle, who did return to practice today, by the way. His status for this game is in doubt or questionable still, but he's at least back on the practice field. But Armstead at left tackle, Andrews Pete at left guard, Max Unger at center, Larry Warford at right guard, and then, of course, Ryan Ramczyk at right tackle. Of those five guys, Unger is probably the weakest link. And that's no disrespect to Unger. I mean, all five of them are extremely talented. But Unger doesn't possess the power or athleticism that the other four players have. He's more of a technician. So when he gets himself out of position, we've seen, and you pointed Max's shortcomings in discussions between you and I and on this show and on your Crescent City show before. When Max gets out of position, he can often get turned around and look almost foolish. As he did on a couple of the plays on Thursday night. That is the center position or any of your interior guard positions. We know from watching Drew for so many years in New Orleans that those three positions, maybe more so than even the left and right tackles, are of vital importance to the Saints passing offense. Because Drew is a little bit shorter as NFL quarterbacks go, and he needs that clean interior pocket. And the book on any passer is get pressure in their face. And they're going to make mistakes.
Yes.
And we saw that a lot on Thursday night. Drew only threw one interception. Now, it was an awful one and an awful time, but he was off the mark all night. He just couldn't get his footing right. He was under more pressure than what we've seen from any other point this season. And that's because of the play of the offensive line. I don't think it's a concern going into this final stretch, but we do face some more talented defenses and some more talented football teams. So it's certainly something to be keeping an eye on, even going into this weekend's game against Tampa.
Yeah. Well, Bob, you made some really, really good points, but I'm just going to say this, man. Yeah, this was one of those games. You have those games, and you're not going to be on top of the world 100% of the time. Never will be. Remember, the New England Patriots had an undefeated season going into that Super Bowl and lost. So it can happen, guys. And I was kind of relieved that we did have a loss, to be honest with you. Now, when you talk about how disruptive those guys were, the Saints have problems handling quicker and faster defensive fronts. Always have. Remember, they had a continuous problem with the Ravens until they finally defeated them this year, right? But remember, it took us to defeat them because of a missed extra point. Okay, we always had problems with the Rams. We'll have up and down games against those guys. It didn't matter if Donald was on the team or not. We always had some problems with those teams because they were faster. The Cleveland Browns as well. Remember, years past where we would lose to those guys. So when the Saints and even the Buccaneers, guys, the Saints will have problems when it comes to the pressure that's up front. And Drew Brees, that was the first time this season that I really saw him questionable about how he was playing. And I was just wondering at halftime, would they have made a better judgment to be able to roll him out more, right? Or to be able to have an extra tight end to help out in pass protection or something to that nature. And I just didn't see the offense make the adjustments that was necessary for the team. And that was just my concern, man. And I'm just going to say this also. Another one of my questions is the confidence level of Eli Apple, as well as I don't see the aggressiveness as we saw once before in Marshawn Lattimore. Now, I could be wrong. What are your thoughts?
I'm disappointed at the way this secondary has played all year long in general. And, you know, for those of our listeners right now, and we always say it at the end, but if you're on Facebook and not a member of the Bayou Blitz Facebook group, look us up, send us a join request. I promise you'll get in. But I throw that out there because Kyle, a couple hours before showtime tonight, posted a poll about Marshawn Lattimore. But your point about Lat is pretty accurate. He struggled coming right out of the gate early this year. Everybody was on the case, saying negative things about the way Ken Crawley was playing and the way P.J. Williams was playing, and rightfully so. Those two gentlemen were playing horrible football. But Marshawn Lattimore was not that much better than them, especially against Tampa Bay and their talented receiving core. He got scorched every bit as much as Crawley and P.J. did in that game. And the word coming out of Saints camp was that Lattimore was struggling a little bit, slow to recover from an ankle injury. And that kind of contributed to his slow start. But he looks like a different player to me, Kyle. I will agree with you. He's still a good cornerback, but the way he played last year when he won Defensive Rookie of the Year, he looked like he was on the verge of an elite, perennial all-pro type of player. And we're not sitting here saying that he's not going to be. I think both of us are in agreement that he just doesn't look like the same kind of player. He doesn't. The Saints are still. Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator, is still trying to put Lattimore on the opposing team's best receiver whenever possible, whenever that coverage scheme calls for it, and that's still probably your best bet for victory back in the secondary. But he doesn't. Maybe you mentioned Eli Apple's confidence, which I'll get into in a second. Lattimore doesn't look like as confident a player. Maybe a little bit, and I don't, he'd be the only one to be able to answer this question. He seems almost in fear of getting the yellow flag thrown on him. Something that we have seen throughout other members of the Saints secondary, not so much Marshawn. But Marshawn is at his best when he gets up in the opposing receiver's face and really gets physical with him. And that's one of the reasons why they actually made the trade the Saints did for Eli Apple towards the trading deadline, because Apple has a similar playing style, and that's kind of the way Dennis Allen wants to run his coverage schemes. He would like to have, or who wouldn't like to have, two solid man-to-man cornerbacks that can get up in the face of the opponent's wide receivers and match them in athletic ability. The days had passed long since, where you could take a Mel Blount or a Mike Haynes or Lester Hayes, or for that matter, even a Deion Sanders, and take your best cover guy if they're an elite level and say, cover this guy all over the field. The way the rules dictate, it's impossible to do that and expect successful results. But I'm one that has a school of thought that if you have talented cornerbacks like Lattimore and even like Apple, who I'm a fan of, you need to get up onto those receivers and alter their routes coming off of the line of scrimmage, particularly when you have a pass rush as good as New Orleans, because if you can delay those wide receivers getting open, that gives your line and blitzing linebackers an opportunity, that extra second or even half second to get to the quarterback. And oftentimes that's all this front needs. And neither one of these guys, especially early in games, are playing as aggressively as personally I would like to see.
Yeah.
And when we do, Eli Apple does have a history of getting a little handy, if you'll pardon the expression. Hence the three flags that got thrown on him in the Dallas game, and I think he has a total of like six or seven penalties against him since he joined New Orleans. Now, again, that's kind of the way the league has shifted the penalty calling, the way the officiating has gone. There's some kind of flaw in the coverage, or perhaps the confidence level of both men. Now that's still, both Lattimore and Apple are still their best bets at those positions.
Right.
But certainly a little bit concerning, of course.
Well, your compadre Deuce Wyndham over at the Canal Street Chronicles listed the Saints with the most penalties. Josh Hill at tight end had 5, the most. Then comes P.J. Williams with 5, Crowley 4, Eli Apple 4, Lattimore 3. I'm just putting it out there, guys. And I'm just wondering, Eli Apple has only been with the team for, what, 5 weeks, right? And he's already near the top of having the most penalties on the team. Troy Aikman said it looks like he is lacking some confidence. His play is looking like it lacks some confidence and some speed. Okay? And when you get handsy and you're grabbing a guy's jersey, is because you can't keep up.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line. And he cannot keep up. And Marshawn Lattimore, man, I remember what was that play that Amari Cooper had him to whiff, act like he was going inside, and whew, he took off.
That was ugly.
Yeah, I'm just saying you got a battle that he's going to go against Evans. He got Evans twice last year, beat him. Evans beat him this year, right? The first game. It's going to be another battle because also think about this. Godwin has been playing pretty well for the Buccaneers. So Eli Apple or P.J. Williams, they're going to have their hands full. And I don't – all I'm saying is this, man. I recall us having that conversation with my cousin Shane Boyle. Remember? And he said this last year. A cornerback has to play aggressive, and a cornerback has to play like he is the man, and nobody else can tell him anything else. He's got to have that kind of swagger and confidence above all else on the field. And my concern is I just don't see what I saw last year in Marshawn's eyes. And Eli Apple looks like a deer in headlights, man. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and your verbiage is already kind of telling me what your answer to this question would be. But starting with Lattimore first, the book on him last year was that he was at his best when he was asked to just, all right, this is your man. You go up, you get him, you eliminate him the best that you can.
Right.
When he struggled, when he did struggle a little bit last year, was when he was asked to play off coverage or perhaps in some different zone schemes. Now, the explanation for that, especially in zone coverage, was that, well, yeah, he's a rookie. He's still got to pick up, some of the different zone tendencies, and he'll improve on that. And there's no reason to believe that he won't. So having said that, if you're going to go based off of some of what last year's scouting reports were saying, that means that your best bet for Lattimore to have success was to tell him, go up, get physical with your guy, match up with them the best you can. The other defensive players will take on their own responsibilities. Now, jumping over to Apple, and I have said pretty much since the day that they traded for him that Apple has similar athletic tendencies to Lattimore. But what I'm seeing out of Apple, and you just kind of echoed that yourself, was that when he is asked to play up, he gets beat fast, and that's when he starts to get grabby and the slags come out of the officials' pockets. So what do you do with these guys then? Do you hope Lattimore plays his way out of what we can only classify as a slump? Because I still think he's an outstanding player, and he still is playing better than what he did to start this season. Do you still, going into this game against Tampa Bay, perhaps the deepest receiving core in the NFL, and we've seen that firsthand. He's had already 3 epic battles with Evans. He got the best of Mike in the first 2 matchups, and then Evans certainly exacted his pound of flesh in opening weekend. Do you take Lattimore and say, Evans is your man? He's one of the most physical receivers in the NFL. You already know what he's going to try to do. Stop it. And then you kind of shift your coverage schemes with Apple, P.J. Williams, and then your safeties to give deep help over the top. Do you then shift them and just hope that Lattimore can hold his own against Evans? Or what do you do if you're Aaron Glenn, the secondary coach, or Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator?
Pray. Look, man, Von Bell has been playing pretty well at safety, but who's Kurt Coleman? Is he on our squad?
He has a number, but that's about all I can say about that.
Kurt, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you, but I'm just trying to say there haven't been no big plays coming from Kurt Coleman this whole year that I can think of. Can you? No,
right. Absolutely not.
So,
in fact,
here's my point. I'm sorry, but here's my point, Bob. No big plays, Kurt Coleman. Von Bell's been playing pretty consistent. Marcus Williams, sporadic. Okay? So if you're going to leave Marshawn Lattimore one-on-one with Evans, like I saw the cushion he was given to Cooper, is he going to give that same cushion to Evans? And if so, if you got a running start and you're a fast wide receiver, you're always going to win that battle. And you see it from Apple as well as from Lattimore. Those guys give too many 6, 7, 8-yard cushions where a receiver of their ilk could be able to take advantage of those cushions either by a double move or a slant, and that's pitch and catch. Let me give you some stats. The most explosive plays given up this year by the Saints is 53. We're ranked 10th in giving up the most explosive plays. Now, the Bucs are worse. They're second in the league giving up the most explosive plays behind the Chiefs, which was surprising to me. The Bucs are at 76. Okay? But the Saints, here's the big problem we have. The Saints have the highest percentage rate against them defensively in the pass play. Nearly 41% of the passes are being completed. Okay? And that's terrible in this league for a team of this caliber. That's all I'm saying. Okay? And I think that the Saints are, number 1 in that category? That's bad.
Yeah, it is. They have, over the last month and a half, really, they have kind of gone back to the disruptive type of defense that brought them so much success last year. They're getting a lot of sacks. They're starting to get some turnovers, and they're limiting the opposing teams, not only on the stat sheet, but even more importantly, keeping them off of the scoreboard. They've allowed 20 points or less in each of the last 4 games, and a total of 8 out of 12 games this season. So if you look at those kind of things, you think to yourself, okay, they're on track defensively, and they have an outstanding run defense. We already know that. But to your point, you think to yourself, okay, well, if you cover one eye, if you look at, and I'll use the most recent game, the Dallas game for an example. We're sitting here, and fans, and I'm sure you've already looked at the stat sheet, but if you hadn't and you're listening to us for the first time, Kyle and I probably sound like the Saints just gave up 400 yards passing. They didn't. But what we're talking about is, if you cover one eye and only look at half of the stat sheet, you're going to see Dak Prescott end the game with 1 touchdown pass and 248 yards, and he got sacked 7 times. So you think to yourself, okay, well, that's pretty darn good. And, yeah, that half of the stat sheet is. Then look at that first half. Dak was 24 out of 28, and they were not dump-off passes. They were intermediate to deep routes to Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup in particular. And that's the vulnerability that we're talking about here in this Saints defense. Gallup and Cooper were primarily covered by Marshawn Lattimore and Eli Apple. Now, I've been on P.J. Williams' case most of the year, and I'm not going to back off now.
Rightfully so.
But Eli and Marshawn they played poor first half in particular. Now, Dallas didn't really do much in the passing game in that second half, aside from the phantom first down to Cole Beasley as that game wound down. And we're not talking about neither Marshawn Lattimore or Eli Apple like they're bums, and this team needs to scrap the whole cornerback concept in the offseason and start from square one. Now, I think they're both still talented players. They need to fine-tune their game a little bit, and frankly, they need to do it in a hurry. Because 24 to allow a quarterback like Dak Prescott to complete 24 of 28 passes, that's going to put your team in trouble every time.
Okay, now I'm going back to Deuce again. Okay, and he broke this down based upon the cornerback play of the New Orleans Saints. Now, Lattimore has had 666 snaps, which is a bad number, but he's had 666 snaps. His opponent wide receivers have been targeted 69 times, completed 46 receptions. That's for a 67% rate. He's allowing his wide receivers to complete. PJ is worse. He's allowing, let's see here, 43 out of 62. 69%. Okay. Apple on the season, now he hasn't been with us the whole time, though, right? Apple's allowed 65%. Crawley allowed 73.3%. That's why Crawley was benched, guys. 73.3. Okay. Now, still, if you look at our top 3 guys, if you average that out, that's still around 68% there. I mean, that's almost like a C average for a wide receiver in this game, that they're getting the quarterbacks are getting those wide receivers the ball. That's the concern, guys. That number has to be down in the 50s, if anything, And how does Aaron Glenn get those guys to perform better, to get them down lower in the percentage rate? Now, Lattimore has only given up 2 touchdowns. PJ has given up 6 touchdowns himself, and Apple 2 touchdowns. But coming this way, we've got teams that we're going to face in the likes of Antonio Brown, Evans, Juju Smith, right? I mean, what's that guy on Funches? So we still have some really good caliber teams that we're facing that we've got to do something to limit that, to drive that percentage rate down. And when it goes to the playoff teams, those numbers are going to go up again if we don't have more of an aggressive approach starting today. That's my commentary on that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and it is absolutely a recipe for ending your season early. The Saints, and for those that don't follow my articles through the Canal Street Chronicles, like Kyle pointed out, right now I'm working on previewing the Saints defense up against the Tampa offense this week. I don't know if I might have to pull close to an all-nighter to get it out in the morning, but it will certainly be out either tomorrow or Friday. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I've alluded to this in articles before, the Saints have given up 8 100-yard receiving performances, all to wideouts.
Wow.
Now, yeah. Now, I mean, some of those were darn good wideouts. Julio Jones has done it twice. Julio only did it once. He had a 95-yard receiving performance as well. Thielen did it. Stephon Diggs did it. So I mean, you're talking about some good wide receivers here. But the NFL is littered with good wide receivers, as you just pointed out. A few of them that the Saints will be facing before the end of the regular season. It's the job of Lattimore, Eli Apple, and P.J. Williams and that Saints coaching staff to figure out a way to stop this from happening. Now, your great wide receivers are still more often than not going to get their numbers. We see it because the Saints have one in Michael Thomas, who is very, very rarely contained. At least contained legally, and I say that tongue in cheek after watching that Dallas game. But to give up 8 100-yard receiving performances in just 12 games, and a couple of those were multiple in one game. The Tampa opening game, for example, both Evans and Deshaun Jackson had over 140 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns between them. Again, that kind of thing is a recipe for sending you home from the playoffs early, because you can just see it now. And you just pointed out the stat, that the Saints have done so poorly at surrendering big plays on the defensive side of the ball. You can't ask for any more production out of the pass rush of this team. And for the most part, they've been consistent in doing so, especially over the last 7 or 8 games. So I think that what I would do, again, if we're going to offer up solutions, and it's got to start this week, I would take Lattimore and his style of play, when he's playing his best, his style of play fits perfectly up against what Mike Evans likes to do. Mike Evans is not a burner. He's athletic, but he's not a burner. He would rather get physical with his defensive backs. So if you play off coverage against Evans, like you said earlier, it becomes a game of pitch and catch, which is exactly what happened between he and Ryan Fitzpatrick early in the game. And when that corner starts to cheat up, well, Evans will just give you a double move, and then before you know it, he's open by 10 yards down the field. So I would take Lattimore, and I would put him right on Evans whenever that was possible to do, whenever the offensive line alignment allowed you to do so. And you have to watch for Deshaun Jackson's speed deep, and Chris Godwin is another extremely underrated and talented receiver. So you still have to watch give them over-the-top safety help, Apple and PJ. And you might want to drop a couple of your athletic linebackers, and the Saints linebackers have been playing extremely well in coverage to help at least clog those shorter to intermediate passing lanes. You're not asking them to line up with any of those Tampa wideouts and one-on-one coverage, and you're not spreading the field too much, but you're asking for a couple of quick and accurate pass coverage drops, to maybe block a couple of those passing lanes, or maybe even drop a guy where the quarterback, Jameis Winston, is not going to see him and gives up a pick or two. What you need to do is not allow those receivers to get open so fast to allow your pass rushers to do what they've done all season.
Right.
You still might give up some big plays or something like that.
Yeah.
The Saints defense, where they've struggled in years past, was when they had to blitz to get to the quarterback, and they would blitz too often, and eventually you're going to get burned on the defensive side of the ball doing that. Dennis Allen doesn't have to blitz as much as he used to. Now, he still will bring it occasionally, but he can afford to be smarter about it because of the talent of that Saints front four. So, then who does the blame fall to for for giving up so many passing yards and for such a high completion percentage? It can only fall to one group, folks, and that's the secondary.
Yeah, and look, Bob, I don't want to belabor the point about our pass defense, but it is what it is, man. And all I'm saying is pretty much what you said. If you guys go ahead and cover those guys, give them less of a cushion than what you've been giving them, or be aggressive at the point of possible contact, redirect them and let the boundary be your extra defender to help you out, or that these safeties are going to have to do a better job in helping them in certain situations. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to do their due diligence in trying to have explosive plays. They are one of the leaders in the league right now with 73 explosive plays down the field compared to the Saints 65. But the way you get to Winston is disguising coverages and playing zone coverages when he's thinking man is going to be there. That's how Winston usually turns over the football, right? So the Saints are going to have to do that, or they're going to have to allow some of these one-on-one battles to happen earlier in the game, or maybe it'll be better for later. But you cannot allow them to have sustained drives. That's the thing that I'm concerned about. And you saw that early on with the Dallas Cowboys. If you allow a team to have sustained drives, and that's what we have been so good at all year long, right? You wear down a defense physically and psychologically. And that's what I want to prevent from this team. So if they want to take their shots with some help down the field. That's all I'm saying. They're going to have to probably play more the Tampa cover 2 type of scheme to help out with Evans. And Godwin is not really big down the field as much as Evans. And, Deshaun Jackson, I'm not sure if he's even going to play still with the thumb injury, right? So then you're down to that one guy. Godwin is more dangerous intermediate. He had an outstanding game last weekend, and we have to take note of that. I think he was he gave Jameis Winston a 153 rating throwing to him last weekend. So that's all I'm saying. And we've been talking about the cornerback play, and you said something that's very critical as well, that defensive line with Rankins, the big Nigerian, and Cam have really done a really good job. And Marcus Davenport, man, it was good to see him back in the game. And I think he contributed to at least, one sack and put some pressure out there. I know he wasn't at 100%, but, man, he's going to be so critical for our run into the Super Bowl and into the playoffs first, and then into the Super Bowl for that defensive line. So let's just make sure that these guys continue on with the success. And I'm not worried about the linebackers. I think our linebackers are playing very, very, very well. Davis, of course, has played an outstanding, has had one of those outstanding seasons. Klein has picked up his game. Anzalone has really done a very, very good job, where they have forced Manti Te'o on the bench, a healthy scratch for the past 4 games, So I still believe that we still need to have one of those game-breaking type of performances from Davenport before the year is out, where people are going to start to say, we need to do something to either slide some extra protection over against him, right? And then the guys will probably open up some things where our linebackers or safety blitzes could be more effective. So that's going to be something that we need to see from Davenport, and I hope we can be able to see that against Winston this coming game.
Yeah, it'd be a great time for it. Davenport was playing so well, not only as a pass rusher, becoming a really disruptive force, but he was playing very well against the run, too, before that foot injury sidelined him, I think, for 3 or 4 games. He's been a little bit slow to recover. I think I agree with you. I think this Dallas game this past Thursday was his best outing yet since returning from injury, so he could be rounding back into form. And that's a scary proposition for opposing offensive lines, because Cam Jordan and Sheldon Rankins are just playing at monstrous levels. David Onyemata had 3 sacks, and you're right, it was Davenport's pressure that forced Dak up in the pocket right into the waiting arms of Onyemata on one of his sacks. But yeah, Onyemata had an outstanding game. We've mentioned Tyler Davison and Taylor Stallworth at defensive tackle before, how well they're playing. More so against the run, they only have like 1 or 2 sacks apiece, but they're getting some nice push and at least drawing blockers in pass protection too, which is allowing a little bit extra attention forced over onto Rankins and even Cam on the outside. And Alex Okafor, he's a consummate professional. He plays the run extremely well. He's a solid pass rusher. He doesn't have all-pro or all-world pass rushing abilities, but he'll get to the quarterback. And he'll bring him down. You cannot ignore Alex Okafor. I mean, this defensive line, I think it's one of the better units in the league. And nobody's talking about it. Not that we should be surprised, as long as the fleur-de-lis is on the side of those helmets. They only think, the rest of the nation only thinks that one player has ever played for the New Orleans Saints, quite obviously. But you have to love the way that this defensive line is playing.
Yeah.
Cam and Rankins, if they don't end up all pro, then something is wrong. Something is wrong with the whole system.
Yeah. Something.
And you pointed out the linebackers. They're playing the run spectacularly. They are athletically able to match up with opposing backs and tight ends, something that has been a big team weakness over the previous 4 or 5 years. And now they're able to athletically match up. Teams that play New Orleans, they're having success to their outside wide receivers, and Kyle and I just highlighted a couple of the reasons why. They are not having success in going to their running backs or tight ends. I mean, you look at the who's who list of running backs that this Saints defense has played. Very versatile guys too. Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley. And I know I'm missing a couple names, but those are some of the biggest names in the NFL as far as running back productivity. None of them got 100 yards rushing, and only I think 2 of them had over 100 all-purpose yards.
Yeah,
they're doing their job.
Yeah, and Bob, I agree with you. What was kind of lost in the loss was the fact that they only gave up, 76 yards to Ezekiel on the ground. It was the passing game that really was the contributing factor to help them overcome the Saints when he picked up some critical first downs here and there and that touchdown. But other than that, man, the run defense of the Saints is still number one in the league.
Yeah, and it's not like if you look, and I get a lot. I don't know where you get your numbers. I get a lot of my numbers from Pro Football Focus. When I do these preview pieces and things like that. The Saints opponents are somewhere near or maybe in the top 10 in rushing attempts. So teams are trying to run the ball against the Saints. It's not like they're coming out with this pass happy attack and end up with a low rush total because they just don't run the ball a lot. They are trying, especially early on into the game. Now, as we know, the Saints have had a couple of blowouts over the last month or so where teams have stopped trying to run the ball by halftime. But they're not able to run the ball coming right out of the gate. And, again, Elliott, Saquon Barkley, and even Todd Gurley, and, all those other guys that they faced, they've not only contained them, they've shut them down.
Right. And not only shutting them down, they've forced the quarterbacks to make plays. And just, man, Dak had one of those games of a lifetime for him. And this was their Super Bowl. Let's just point it out as well as we can. This was their Super Bowl, and they played very well against our team, and they were more amped. They are more enthusiastic. You saw it, right, in how they played. That young linebacker, both of those young linebackers, Smith as well as Van Der Esch, outstanding. Great jobs.
Yeah.
And I really believe we will have a better game plan if we need to meet them in the playoffs. Now, going into this game, the Saints, what concerns me, we already talked about, was our defensive backfield. But what concerns me is the fact that I did not know this. Tampa Bay leads. They're one of the top teams when it comes to third and short, where they lead in picking up the first down. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is, and frankly, a little bit surprising.
Yeah.
Because you look at their overall numbers, and Tampa's offense is tops in the league in passing yardage, and we kind of outlined why with a deep and talented receiving core and things like that. But they're awful at running the ball. So you would, that is one of the odd statistics.
Yeah, and
when
here's
you're looking
another
down the chart and you see their third down percentage, and you're like, wow, really? How?
Yeah. And another odd statistic is that they are better than the Saints just by a fraction in third and outs. They are better at not having as many third and outs than the Saints. Wow. I was very surprised in that, man. 3 and outs. I mean, not third and outs, 3 and outs.
Yeah.
So when you look at this game, man, and Bob, you and I have seen many a time where the NFC South games are more like SEC games, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's just who's going to have that will to not lose to our rival. That's it. And it may come down to that in the second half of this game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be a close game again this time. If you told me that the Saints were going to have 7 defensive sacks, 2 takeaways, right? Especially a takeaway at a critical time in the game, and give Drew back the ball, I would have said, oh, we won. As a matter of fact, I tweeted right after we got the ball back, I said, this is the moment. This is the moment. And we had that opportunity. But they seized the moment, putting pressure in Drew's face. Just like he threw that interception in Minnesota, he threw that interception there in his face. So that's how you win. And who should have been protecting him in his face? Unger, Walford, Pete.
Yeah. And, Tampa Bay has an extremely talented defensive line, especially at rushing the passer. And they've had success at pressuring Breeze in the past, especially Gerald McCoy at defensive tackle. So, Unger, Pete, Warford are definitely going to be tested by McCoy and Vita Vea. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. He didn't play in the first game in the season opener.
That's right.
He's slow to recover from a preseason injury, but he's a big body in the middle, and he's quick off the snap, too. So he's really those two players are really going to test that Saints interior line because we know that the tackles can't pinch inside to help them. Ramczyk and whether it's Bushrod or Armstead, if he comes back, they're going to be tested by JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul, William Golston, and I forget his name, Nassib, Carl Nassib, defensive ends on the outside.
The ex-Cleveland
they don't play
guy,
the run particularly well, but they're extremely dangerous in pass rushing.
Yeah.
So the Saints' offensive line is going to be tested this week once again.
Yeah, and again, we've got to watch how successful Unger will be in doing his job, because what really confused that offensive line were those games and stunts that were being played, and the lack of communication on how those protections were going to be handled between Drew as well as Unger to the line. I think they were missing. They missed a couple that sack. Matter of fact, when the safety blitz came off of Drew's blind side, he just missed it. Totally missed it. He didn't slide that protection where he was was necessary. So Bob, when you look at everything, you look at how well the Tampa Bay Bucs are playing. You look at the minor setback the New Orleans Saints have. One thing that discouraged me was the body language, especially of our leader, Drew Brees, toward the end. And you saw that photo that's been out there with him hunched down, head down. You saw it even on the sidelines in the second quarter of that game, where those guys just their body language disturbed me, man. I never saw that all season long from these guys, their body language. And I saw even when Kamara was hit, when he came to the sidelines. I mean, I wanted to say, pick up your head, young man. Pick up your head, because not only me as a fan is picking up on this, but other people in the NFL are picking up on that as well. So if they know they can be able to put some pressure and make it difficult for these guys, how well are you going to respond? And that's why this game is the response. I'm waiting to see the response from the New Orleans Saints, and if that response is going to be a positive response or a negative response. That's all I want to see. Even if they lose the game, I want to see how they respond. That's the point I'm trying to make. Because
and
we still got three more important games.
Extremely telling. I realize that Tampa Bay has a losing record. It's the last team with a losing record that they're going to face in 2018. And especially on the offensive side of the ball for New Orleans. You mentioned the body language. I'll do you one better. Coming out from the opening kickoff, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Now I realize we're watching on TV. We're not at field level, and we're certainly not on the Saints sidelines. But it just looked to me like those guys, they weren't there. They weren't emotionally there. Now I could be way off base, and again, sometimes you miss a lot of things when you're watching a game on TV. Regardless of the trained eye or not. But all game long, from the opening kickoff, and I had been saying they didn't show up to play. They didn't, and that's why I semi-joked, when I said that the Saints offense must have stayed in New Orleans, because that wasn't the Saints offense that we have seen for the majority of the 2018 season. I'll be extremely interested to see how they respond. A lot of us, and myself included, I've said this, has said that Tampa Bay is going to face a very angry Saints team. Well, they should. They should. New Orleans should be angry at themselves with how they played. But sometimes if you're faced with adversity, and the Saints are, and I realize that they're 10-2, so you might be thinking to yourself, well, what kind of adversity are they facing? They're still in a fight for the number 1 seed. They know how important that is. To at least have a bye going into the playoffs, and that's not even assured at this point. They still need at least one more victory or a Carolina loss for the NFC South title. So guys, 10-2 or not, nothing has been clinched. We've seen complete collapses from teams before. Now, I don't think any of us expect that from this New Orleans team, but this is the first time since week 1 that this team has essentially been punched in and you and I both love the boxing analogies. This team has been punched in the mouth and they've been dropped to their knees. Are they going to pull themselves back up and start fighting again? Or are they going to take a beating from here on out? So don't think for one second that, just because they're facing Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay has a losing record. They have an awful pass defense. They turn the ball over a lot on offense. Yeah, all the numbers stack up in New Orleans' favor. But there are a couple of key numbers that Tampa brings to the table that New Orleans struggles the most in, number 1. Number 2, like I just said, the Saints and the adversity that they are now facing, and how are they going to respond? The first real adversity they faced all year. And number 3, like you said, NFC South. It's an NFC South opponent. You can throw all those statistics out the window. Tampa Bay played Carolina last week, another NFC South opponent. Now, we make fun of Cam Newton a lot, and he's an easy target. But you don't see Cam. How often do you see Cam Newton throw 4 interceptions in a single game?
Yeah.
Well, he did last week in the loss to Tampa Bay. So, any divisional opponent through the NFL, and a number of the NFL veterans that we've had even on this show will tell you that the divisional games are different. They're more intense. The mistakes are magnified, et cetera, et cetera. But the NFC South in particular, would be unpredictable. Plus, you're on the road. The weather is, they're calling for some questionable weather at this point, the last I saw.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Interesting.
I kind of look ahead, and I don't pay too much attention to weather forecasts anyway. But and a couple other people told me that it's supposed to be severe thunderstorms at game time and things like that. And we know those Florida thunderstorms could be interesting and kind of turn that Tampa Bay field into a little bit of a mud pit. So I'm not sure. I think that would favor the Saints style of play, but weather in the NFL can be the great equalizer.
This is how it's going to play well for the Saints. If they're able to rush the football, that's that's how it's going to play well with the Saints. Can they rush the football? Can they average in between, let's say, 4.7 to 5.1 yards per rush? Can they continue and sustain long drives, right? Can they get, from a defensive point of view, get Tampa Bay off the field often and early that first half of the game? And can they come out that second half, shut them down, as well as put some points up early in the third quarter? That is going to be the keys, especially in a inclement game, Look, even if the Saints stay at the second seed, right, I still like our chances. Let me tell you why.
Mm-hmm. So do I.
Okay, so let's say the playoff standings is 1, Los Angeles, 2, Saints. You look at the 3rd seed, Chicago, and you look at the 4th seed, Dallas. Then you look at 6th seed, Minnesota, and 5th seed, right now, projected is Seattle. I still like our chances. Let's say Dallas goes into goes into Chicago, 3rd and 4th play, lose that game, and we play the Bears in our dome. I like our chances. Let's say Dallas goes up there and wins, and they come to our dome. I like our chances. Okay? Let's say Seattle goes in and defeats Minnesota and plays the Rams. I like their chances because they have played them twice down to the wire. Very hard games, right? I like the chances of Minnesota defeating the Seattle Seahawks and giving the Rams a run for their money as well. So, either way, if you look at these scenarios, I think we could possibly, if the Saints take care of their business, of course, can see the NFC Championship game in New Orleans if we're the number 1 seed or if we're the 2nd seed. Either way. I prefer the 2nd seed, to be honest with you. I like our chances there, to be honest with you, man. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw the Rams lost a home playoff game last year. Atlanta went in and defeated them.
Right.
And if you look down the list of the NFC potential / probable playoff teams, and let's throw Carolina, Washington. I think you mentioned Philadelphia. Let's throw all them. They're all still mathematically alive. You throw all those teams into a hat and tell me which one. If you said, Kyle, Bob, the New Orleans Saints are going to have to play one playoff game on the road. You pick which one it's going to be. Do you want to go to Philadelphia? Do you want to go to Minnesota again? How about Chicago? Do you want to go to Seattle? We've seen how a couple of those scripts have played out before. Or do you want to go to Los Angeles? I think I'd want to go to Los Angeles.
Right.
Their home field advantage. They're a talented team. Nobody's taking anything away from them. But if you told me that you had to win one road playoff game and you picked the city based off of the likely NFC playoff teams, I would pick going to Los Angeles. How about you?
Exactly. Better weather situation, like you said. You don't want to have those inclement possibilities in Chicago nor in Seattle. If we go up to Minnesota, it's a dome. Not too concerned. Dallas is a dome. Like I said, Philadelphia, I think we still could take care of our own there if they meet the Saints in Philly, but I think that's highly unlikely. I'm just saying this, man. I like the position where we at. If we stay second, I like the position. We get the first seed, I like our position as well, because I think through attrition, they'll knock off some of the more dangerous teams. I don't see Chicago as being highly dangerous. I know the young Michael Trubisky, right? He has been injured. He's due to come back. He's been playing very well, but they still don't put up a lot of points. That's the thing, guys. They still don't put up a lot of points. And look, Khalil Mack, early on in the season, was clearly an NFL MVP favorite, if not Defensive Player of the Year favorite. And he still is a disruptive force like Aaron Donald, right? Mm-hmm. But who was it that they were playing a couple of weeks ago? He was neutralized. And I was kind of like, wow, he wasn't performing well. He was kind of neutralized until toward the end of the game he made a play. Okay. So look, man, I'd rather somebody take out the Dallas Cowboys right now, because I think the Cowboys can give us some speed problems. Wagner for the Seattle Seahawks played very well. You can see that defense is gaining more confidence how they're playing. That's why I believe they can give the Los Angeles Rams a lot of problems. I really do. And Kirk Cousins, he's not playing well. I'm sorry.
No. Well, I mean, you know how I feel about Kirk Cousins. Anybody that follows me knows how overrated I think Cousins is. But I do believe that Minnesota still has an extremely talented roster. But Seattle, I'll tell you what, Seattle's a dangerous team right now.
It is. Highly dangerous.
And look, I think, back to the Saints, I got to believe that Sean Payton in particular and that coaching staff and the team leaders, they have a checklist right now. And that is, and, basically, the first thing on the checklist will take care of a couple things, but their focus and immediate goals are this: win the next game, and secure your playoff berth, win your division. And by winning your division, that does assure you of at least one home game. Now, fortunately for New Orleans, the top goal on that list, win the next game, that takes care of all that. They automatically clinch the NFC South, therefore clinching themselves a home game and securing an official playoff berth just by doing all that. Then they can take care of the rest of the goals after that. Are they aware of where the Los Angeles Rams and the Chicago Bears are in relation to them in the standings? Of course they are. I mean, they're human. They have eyes to read, ears to listen, and they realize that kind of thing is going to need to get taken care of as well. But you can't take care of anything until you take care of what's directly in front of you, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and trying to win the next football game. And I do expect New Orleans to come out extremely focused in this one. One thing that does concern me, and I know we're starting to trickle down on time here. Kyle, did you know that against Dallas, that other than Michael Thomas, who was kind of held in check, whether it was legal or not, Michael Thomas, Keith Kirkwood, and Dan Arnold were the only wide receivers / tight ends to have a reception against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Nobody else.
I saw that stat. Look, troubling. That was – hey, look, they did their job. They made the Saints one-dimensional as well. Let's see. Kamara had 11 targets, 8 receptions. Kirkwood, Darnold, Ingram had 2 receptions, right? Look. Oh, I'm so glad you conjured up some memories for me there, Bob. The comment Michael Thomas made after the game, he said, what? I need to play more violent, right? What did we say 2 weeks ago about Tre'Quan Smith? He doesn't play. He doesn't play aggressively to the ball.
Yeah.
He had a touchdown in his hand. Let it go through his hands. You saw how casual he was about that. You saw how casual he was about throwing his hands up and thinking the football was just going to just slap in his hands and be there. What's the young man, Arnold? Good God, this is the second week in a row. Snag a ball out the air. Hold on to the football. Please. Please. Look, I'm telling you, what Dez would have brought to these guys would have been how to be aggressive for the football. And Michael Thomas, I've got to agree, that game he was not as aggressive to the football. He was waiting on some of those balls to get to him. And that's why the Saints need a veteran presence out there. Now, I don't know if Brandon Marshall can bring that to them. Sean Payton was kind of evasive today with the reporters when it came to if he's going to play or not, right, Bob? So, I'm just going to say it, man. You got to be aggressive right now. This is the season where teams are going to be smacking you around as a wide receiver, as a running back. Don't expect any preferential treatment right now. You've got to be aggressive. You've got to almost be like an actor as well. If those guys are holding, you got to show some egregious like behavior. Like, he's like, you got to be almost falling out like a diva right now if you want those calls to come your way, right? And I guess that's all really to say, man. Look, you've got right now in December, you've got to be aggressive, point blank, end of story. And if you, as a receiver, you're not aggressive, as a running back, Mark Ingram, if you're not hitting that hole and being violent in the hole, you're going to have those games where you're going to lose. And those offensive linemen as well. If you're not ready to smack somebody in the mouth and be the bullies like you were the first part of the season, you're going to lose. And that's what happened. The Dallas Cowboys decided, okay, we're going to beat you up. We're not going to take a whooping. We're going to give a whooping. That's it.
Yeah, and the Saints defense responded, and they responded well. The Saints offense did not respond.
No.
I look for them to do so this week. You kind of, and I chuckled when you brought up the fact that Coach Payton was evasive in questions about Brandon Marshall. Mm-hmm. And hey, why should we expect Coach to be any different? He did say one thing in his presser that kind of made me want to jump out of my skin, and that he said Brandon's a quick study and he's picked up the offense. Well, my follow-up question is, well, why the hell is he not on the field? Are you then telling me? I mean, by that answer, you tell me, okay, well, Brandon has grasped the offense. So by transitive property, then Brandon must not be on the field because he can't play anymore. Is that what you're telling me? And we don't know. We haven't seen him on the field.
Don't be surprised if he doesn't play Sunday. That's all I'm saying. Don't be surprised.
Expect him to.
Don't be surprised. And I just think this is more some gamesmanship from Peyton, because just like you ran down the list and we ran down this list, I didn't see Carr anywhere on this list being targeted.
Nope.
Right? I didn't see, but Kirkwood had that touchdown, but it looks like he and Smith ran the wrong routes. They were both there. Yeah. I didn't know if that ball was going to Smith if Kirkwood wasn't there. He had a play on it. He had a potential play on that. That's what I should say. So, look, man, I tell you, Bob, man, I just think our time is now to really have that adversity that we're going to play through. It's going to be a tough game on Sunday, man. And if anybody believes Tampa Bay is going to go down and allow the Saints just to walk over them, you got another thing coming. Because, when you look at this playoff picture, man, you go to ESPN. I was doing that playoff machine, NFL playoff machine. They have a chance to get into playoffs if they win out. Tampa Bay. So Tampa Bay is not just playing for a right to say we beat the Saints. Tampa Bay is playing so they want an opportunity to get into the playoffs, guys. Bottom line. Chicago, look, if they don't win this game against the Rams coming up, I don't see them. I can see them representing, but I don't see them as a true player. And the Packers, we can call it a day for them. So the North is really between the Bears and the Vikings right now, man. That's my thought. Lions, that's just crazy. Yeah.
That's just it. The Vikings are breathing down the Bears' neck. And, even America's team, Dallas, they have Philly down their neck. And the talking heads, on the alphabet networks, they're still talking like Philadelphia. The most of them favor Philadelphia to win that division. I agree with you. I think both Chicago and Dallas will make it into the playoffs, but their division championships are by no means secured. They have their own battles to worry about. We've already mentioned Seattle, and Seattle has themselves positioned properly, but they still have to win a couple of key games down the stretch. So Tampa Bay is still very much into the mix. I mean, without getting into all the mathematical possibilities, I'm pretty certain that they have to win out and still have some help. But they have by no means folded their tent on this season. And again, divisional rival, you're never gonna wave the white flag against the divisional rival because there's a certain extra aspect of pride that's involved here.
Yeah, you're right, man. I don't know. Look at Chicago's schedule. They have to play the Rams, Packers, 49ers, and Vikings. That last game, could that be the game to decide the NFC North? Right? Saints have a difficult route. Pittsburgh is going to still be trying to win their division, right? Because they had a letdown game. They should have never lost to the Chargers. And people, you need to be looking out for the LA Chargers. That team is going to really – I think that the LA Chargers could possibly be up there and represent the AFC. They have that opportunity to do so.
Kyle, there's a team lurking in the AFC South that's won 9 straight. Someone predicted them to get,
Bill O'Brien still scares me. Look, I would love you. I'm here. I talk to these Texans fans, which a lot of Texans fans, they root for the Saints. They do root for the Saints. They do. And we've been talking, and we're like, man, it would be so great to have a Gulf Coast Super Bowl, especially in Atlanta. Wouldn't that be great? That would be great.
It would. And all you need to do is tell those friends of yours that the prettiest writer over at Canal Street Chronicles predicted that earlier this year.
Yeah, you did, man. And I was so wrong about the Jaguars. But, Bob, I'm telling you, the one guy that scares me above all of those guys is Bill O'Brien and his play calling. What has really helped them out is that defense, because his play calling still has been suspect. Even last week when they won against the Cleveland Browns. DeAndre Hopkins. Now, if Michael Thomas wants to look at somebody who plays with aggression and conviction, DeAndre Hopkins is your man. Bottom line.
Yeah.
That boy can ball.
Yeah.
Look, man. Bob, I really believe that this is going to be one of those, not last week, but this is going to be the week that's going to really tell how our team is going to play throughout the rest of the season, man. I thought it was last week. They have their adversity. This is going to be a challenge.
It is, and I expect them. I expect them to respond well. This is a talented team. They have remained focused all year, despite other national attention being on the so-called darlings like the Rams, the Chiefs, always the Patriot, et cetera, et cetera. They've ignored all that. They've ignored the Drew Brees is too old. They've ignored this defense is still not good enough. They've been able to shut out all the noise. And by their poor performance last week, they created more noise for themselves now. And I knew it's a road game. It's a road game against a divisional opponent, and one that they don't match up well with, especially on the defensive side of the football. But I do expect the Saints to pick themselves up off the campus and to come out fighting in this one. I'm with you. It wouldn't surprise me. In fact, I expect a fairly close game. Both teams should be able to put some points up on the scoreboard, but Tampa turns the ball over a lot. They roll up the yardage. They'll roll up the points. They're good on third downs, like you pointed out, but they turn the ball over a lot, and I think that that's going to be their downfall as far as Tampa offense versus New Orleans defense. New Orleans offense, they're going to get back to what they do best, and that is they're going to hit them with their talented weapons. I expect a good bounce-back performance from both Thomas and Kamara. Kamara got quite a few touches last week, but didn't put up a great stat line. Those Dallas linebackers really ran with him well. But, Mr. Inside and Mr. Outside of Ingram and Kamara, and we know that that's not accurate because Kamara has shown the ability to run between the tackles and Ingram can make plays in the open field. But I expect a good game and a busy game from Ingram and Kamara. I expect a lot of touches from both those guys. Tampa Bay's linebacking core coming into the season, Quan Alexander, Levante David, and Beckwith. Those three are as fast and athletic as any three linebackers in the NFL. But the only guy left standing is Levante David. Now, he is still an outstanding linebacker, but the Buccaneers have been torched defensively by Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Tarek Colin, Joe Mixon. All of those backs have similar skill sets to an Alvin Kamara, and those guys have averaged 156 yards and scored 10 touchdowns in five games against Tampa.
Right.
And Kamara has tore them up in 3 games against them as it is. So I expect a lot of touches to Kamara. They're gonna use Thomas. Thomas is gonna come out angry. I heard that he missed practice today. Hopefully it was just a Veterans Day off. I haven't heard anything more serious out of that.
Ankle injury.
We already,
right?
Was it?
I think it's an ankle injury they're monitoring right now with him.
Okay.
We'll see how that plays out. This is the thing that people need to look at, guys, and I'm just going to say it. The past 7 games, when they made the change and fired Mike Smith, now under I guess, what's his name, Duffner as their defensive coordinator. They have now ranked second in those 7 games in the league in the number of sacks, 6 INTs, 363 yards. They have only given up on average to opponents and 26 points allowed. They are now third in the league in stopping opponents on third down. So, I'm just saying, the Bucs are better defensively. That's a part of the challenge. You already named the McCoys and the JPPs and the Vita Veas and whomever else, but also look at their safety and what's his Andrew Adams. Make sure we keep an eye on him. Last week when the Panthers were able to shut down Mike Evans, right? That's when Godwin had a great game. So P.J. Williams has to be on top of his game, as well as Eli Apple. All right, Bob, any last thoughts, comments, criticisms?
No, I think we've criticized just about everybody through the Saints organization that we felt in the need to this
and
week.
Sean Payton, I'm coming for you, Sean Payton. I'm coming for you.
No, I mean, I feel like it's a great show. I'll be honest with you, my NFL week doesn't start until my NFL week doesn't feel like it starts until Wednesday, and now I'm in full game mode for for Sunday. Hopefully our more importantly, I hope our New Orleans Saints are. But I think they will be. But yeah, it's been a fun show tonight. I know we have a couple big name guests lined up for the next few weeks as well. But just you and I getting reacquainted tonight with the Marshawn Lattimore and Eli Apple of the Saints talk show circuit.
Yeah, definitely. Can he be the apple of our eye, or can he be the apple of our contempt on next weekend? Look, guys, I know a lot of people don't realize this. Andre Ware, I know Andre Ware and his family. Andre lost his mother last Thursday, and being prayer for them. You know, Andre is one of the voices of the Texans radio network.
Yeah.
I was going to try to get him on as a guest with us this season as well. Still could possibly do that going toward the playoff push, but let's be in prayer.
Yeah, I love that. One of the best college quarterbacks I've ever seen.
Yeah, definitely. Heisman Trophy winner, Mr. Andre Ware. Not only that, let's still be in prayer for the Bush family. We lost President Bush.
Yes.
He was really one of the more respected presidents that I can ever. You know, I know people look at him as a one-termer. It was just one of those critical times in the point of our country, how things kind of switched for him. But, you know, that was a man of character. I really appreciated he and his wife. My son got a chance to be able to read for Barbara Bush several years ago at Texas A&M and met her and took a nice photo with her. She was very warm with him and even had some good conversations with him at the end of the program. So we respect the Bush family here, especially in Texas, as well as across the nation. We honor President Bush for his legacy and his commitment to our country. Something else, Mike McCarthy, man, that was a shocker there. I'm pretty sure he's going to land somewhere, Bob, man.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Jets might be a good place for him, but there's going to be several openings. I believe that's going to crop up over the league this coming at the end of this season. So, good show, Bob. Tell everybody how they can be able to follow you on social media as well as the internet.
Well, I can be found on both Facebook and Twitter. My personal page is Bob Rose on Facebook and at Bobby R2613 on Twitter. So please give me a follow. Much appreciated. And love to talk Saints football or just NFL football in general. And I like to have a lot of fun. My articles, as most of you know, are through the Canal Street Chronicles, which I not only post on my personal page, but through Canal Street Chronicles on Facebook and on Twitter at Saint CSC. Hopefully, as I mentioned before, and as we've mentioned every week, hopefully you are, if you're listening to us, that you are already a member of our Bayou Blitz Facebook group. We have a lot of fun in there, a lot of great information and breaking news gets exchanged. So look us up, or if you have a friend or family member that you think would enjoy what we do in our show and what we do in social media, add them to the Bayou Blitz group. Steer them to some of our great past shows through the Bayou Blitz as well. Our family is growing fast, and we love every single member. We thank you for your support and for the point that we have reached, and for the point that we're going to be reaching. We're reaching for bigger and better things even. Definitely, man. And don't forget, Bob is the prettiest writer on Canal Street Chronicles. So please let John Hendricks know that. Don't forget, you can follow us at the Saints News Network at saintsnewsnetwork.com, as well as at saintsnews.net 24/7, all the Saints news from across the internet. And you can be able to follow us on the web at Saints News on Facebook, Instagram, as well as Reddit, and
golly, there was something else. Twitter as well. Not only that, man, don't forget, Barry Hurst is our featured columnist on Saints News Network, and you can read all of Barry's writings. He cranks out around 18 stories a day. He is quite the virtuoso. He wakes me up sometimes, Bob, at 4 in the morning. Hey, I got a question. Really, Barry? 4 in the morning. Thank you so much. But that's my boy, Barry Hurstis. Guys, we're going into the holiday season. As a reminder, public service announcement, be safe out there. I know a lot of families are out shopping and being in certain situations in some of these parking lots are not as safe. So keep a vigilant eye out for yourself and your family through the holiday season. All right, Bob, tell Will and Lauren I said hello, and you have a great rest of your week. We'll chat this weekend going into the Saints game on Sunday. Don't forget, follow Bob, follow us, follow everything that we do. But most of all, you stay safe, Saints fans and Who Dat Nation. We love you. This is Kyle T. Mosley with Saints News Network with my man Bobby Rose from the Canal Street Chronicles as well as the Bayou Blitz. Bob, take care. Love you, man.
Love you too. We'll see you guys.
Peace. Take care. Bye.